Hey, what's happening guys? I'm ika.himee and welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to be doing another kind of Wish review. I ordered some markers from Wish. They were listed as touch 5, however when I got them they were touch only. As you can see here, I have already done the swatches. I did them when I got them to basically just test and make sure the markers worked, as well as fill this out so I don't have to do it on camera. This is what they look like. They have a chisel tip and a bullet nib. So here I'm just kind of referring to the color sheet to pick out the colors that I want to use because I need to. I'm not familiar with these markers at all. Some of the markers, the caps, and on a couple of them, like the barrels, they arrived to me like a little cracked, so not like ideal quality, but you know, as long as they work, they were cheap enough, I don't really care. I think I got, 80 of them for like 30 bucks, 35 bucks or something like that. So it wasn't that bad. It was definitely less than $1 a marker, so I can't really complain because that is way cheaper than Copic, and they are in fact alcohol based. And I am trying my best to kind of blend the stuff out. Here, using a bullet nib is not something that I'm used to, and I have to say it's not something I particularly enjoy. I like how the brush nib works and how you can easily taper lines, whereas the bullet nib is like just kind of writing with a pen. It's just kind of going to be like one way. But I am trying my best to like make sure the colors blend together. And this is a printout. If you remember one of my last speed paints where I colored Sakura and Copics, this is a printout of that line art, as I had scanned it before I colored it, and I decided to print it on Bristol board to give these markers a fair review, because I want to compare them to what the Copic can do. So yeah, what I was struggling with a lot throughout this piece was that the colors were... It seems like you get kind of a wide range of colors on the paper because there's 80 different markers, but really it's kind of like difficult to find the right colors. A lot of colors are more cool toned and a lot of colors don't really go together very well, and it doesn't have a code like Copic does. Copic has a color and blending code so that you know what color family the marker is in and what color it will blend the best with, and I'm kind of just winging it with these touch only markers. I'm really trying my best, but it's kind of just... it's difficult. They don't blend out as smoothly as Copic. I did notice that. I don't know if it's because of like a lower alcohol content, or I don't know what the deal is with the ink, but they just don't blend out quite as smoothly. I did use my Copic colorless blender to kind of erase some of the overlapping lines. It worked fine enough for that. I wouldn't say it worked great or anything like that, but I also didn't really try all that hard because I knew that this was just kind of going to be a test sheet with me trying to just use these markers and see what I can do with them. The hair was the hardest part to color, I'd have to say, because when I color hair with Copics, I use a lot of swooping lines and I heavily rely on the brush tip, and having a bullet nib made it almost impossible to really get any kind of point whatsoever, and it really looks like it was just cell shaded, and I'm not a fan of that look in particular. When I started out, I picked a lighter brown that I thought was going to be the darker brown, but I was having a hard time gauging the color of the markers because they look one way on the sheet, and obviously they look darker when you put them down, and when they dry they lighten up because that's how alcohol-based markers work. But I was just having a really hard time getting the color to what I wanted the color to be, and I tried to go in with a color that I thought would be more brown for like more detail shading, and it ended up being a lot more red than I had anticipated. So it was just really hard, and it seemed like I was trying to use them and the colors that I thought they were just wasn't working out for me, even though I had the swatches on hand and I was trying to pick out the colors based on that. But it's also that I didn't have a huge selection of colors to work with, so it was kind of like just struggling to find colors that I could even layer on top of each other to hint at any kind of shading. So that was a challenge that I had encountered as well. But I mean, obviously that probably wouldn't be as much of a challenge if you had more of these markers. then I mean, because I just had 80, I just bought the 80 set, which I think off of Wish was kind of like the most I could buy. I think they have like 168 colors available, but in a set they were only selling them for like 80 per set. But actually, you can, if you want to test out these markers or something, you can go to some sellers and they have them available for like free. I think you just pay a couple dollars for shipping or whatever. So ultimately, it's, you know, it's not as cheap to do that, but you essentially get the marker for free if you just want to test like one or two of them out. They'll send you like a random one or whatever. So if you're interested in that, you can do it. But yeah, so I'm going in and I'm trying to blend these colors out. Again, they just don't really blend all that well. And again, bullet nib is kind of a struggle, and I ended up switching to the chisel nib when I was trying to make the highlights and stuff, because the bullet nib, it was not working out so well, and I was trying my best to use both ends to make it look good, and I feel like it, you know, it just didn't really work out all that well. I'm sure with like practice or something, if this was all you had, I'm sure you could do great things with these markers, but since I'm used to Copics and brush nibs, I just couldn't really pull it off so well. Another thing that I did notice was that most of the colors in this were cool toned, and a lot of the colors also seemed to be more neon. They were very, very, very vibrant, a lot more vibrant than I had anticipated them being, and layering on top of each other was a bit difficult, especially with these colors, because it was just kind of hard to gauge how the shading would look. And it was weird. It was kind of, at points it was like coloring with a highlighter. It was just insane, and I'm not used to that because I don't actually have any of the fluorescent Copics. I just have more of like the regular colors, so I wasn't really used to having such bright colors put down on the paper. So I did find that the chisel nib, it really did put down the color quite nicely, like if you're doing flat colors and stuff like I did for the clothing. I mean, it worked essentially like a Copic would. You know, I think that was similar enough, and no real problems doing that. It was really just the shading that I was having a bit of trouble with. I would try to blend, but again, the colors, it just wouldn't work as well. I feel like the ink also might have dried a little quicker than Copic does. I'm not 100% sure on that because, you know, I work with Copics a little bit differently sometimes, and this one I was kind of just trying to go through it really quickly and try and keep the paper wet, but I didn't really notice that even in the areas where the paper I knew for sure was still definitely wet, it didn't really seem to make much of a difference in the blendability of the markers themselves. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not up to what a Copic can do. You can't solidly blend out these colors, I have noticed. And like Copic, you can pretty much blend any color into any color. And this one, even just putting down the same color down on something that's wet, just kind of leaves a more of a hard edge. I did notice also that the color is very easy to separate. When I was working on her blush specifically, the pink started separating as I was trying to blend it out into her skin, so that's something to look out for. Oversaturation kind of pulls the pigment off of the paper. I never notice it so much with Copics, but I also don't have to work as hard with Copics. You know, I'm kind of just, it doesn't take as much work, and these definitely took a lot of work to get the colors down right. Now this entire piece, aside from me using the Copic Colorless Blender, is done with the touch-only markers. So I didn't want to go into any other kind of marker or medium. I really wanted to show you guys what these markers can do, and I am sorry that a lot of Caro is on the edge. I apologize for that. I did not realize it was that close to the bottom. Of course, I probably never realized. But yeah, so you missed kind of a lot of his coloring, I guess. I apologize, but I tried to use a similar technique to the original Caro in the first drawing that I did, but I didn't go for the highlighted edge because these brush markers, these bullet tip markers, don't really fan out quite as nicely as the brush tips. So I would have had to cover it up anyways. It wouldn't have looked as nice. But I do find that I was given a nice selection of yellows to use, so I was able to blend that out quite nicely, and I'm actually not offended at all at how Caro came out. He's a little bit more saturated than the original drawing, but as far as blendability goes and stuff like that, I think he blended out fine. So I think that you can work with these okay, but you just need a lot more of the colors to be able to do that, or just do more flat colored cell shading type illustrations, because I think that they would be really fine for that. Now I did go in and I wanted to add more color to it instead of just doing gray, but I wasn't really given a lot of colors to choose from. I wasn't given a blue-gray, so I went in with like my light violet shade to try and block all that stuff out. But yeah, I mean, really, it came in a case, and I was also given a white gel pen with it, which I didn't know I was getting, which was nice of them to include. It's not a great gel pen or anything like that, but it was nice of them to give it to me anyways. So yeah, really, honestly, I don't recommend these, but I don't not recommend them. It's kind of neutral, and it really just depends more on your budget as to whether or not these will be able to work nicely for you. But ultimately, I think they're fine for what they are, and if you want to try them, you're more than welcome to. I prefer Copic, but that's just me. I think these markers are a fine accompaniment to Copics or Touch 5 markers or any other alcohol-based marker. I haven't tested to see how well they interact with each other, but with them being alcohol-based, I'm not all that worried. So I think they would be fine to go along with each other instead of just using them as your sole set. So that is also something to consider. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to be updated every time I post a new video. All the links to my social media, shop, and Patreon are in the description box below for you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!